can actually post on social media about what's happening in Burma. And in addition to that, post on the company's pages, on social media. I think it's great that we're going to be signing petitions that are demanding these companies to make change. But in order to push them even more, what's better would be to go on their social media pages to comment on actions and what they're doing to these, with the oil money, and also just how it's funding the Myanmar military. So the petitions will most likely show how to do that. They have all the language you need, so you just copy and paste it. And along with social media, you can also follow all of our organizational pages at GM4MD, at USACM, at Campaign for New Myanmar, at Earth Rights International, all that stuff. And then just keep in touch with us, follow up on our news. You can also follow Blood Money Campaign and also Global Myanmar Spring Revolution on social media. And then just continue to repost, reshare all of our content that we'll be posting out there in the following months, and just, on a daily basis. So that would be great to just raise awareness once again on Burma and the importance of MOGE sanctions. And so that was that. So we've gone over sending petitions now and social media. The next thing, but not least, is Congress. So this means your senators and representatives. Basically, what you can do is call them. Simply call up their offices and say, hey, I'm a friend of someone from Burma, or I'm someone from Burma, and I want to see my congressperson, my senator or representative co-sponsor the Burma Act if they have not yet. Or if they have, you can just thank them and say, hey, I'm really grateful that you supported the act. Please do something more so that we can build pressure to let the bill pass. So that's what it looks like to call them. And if you're still confused, you can always reach out to USACM. We can further give you the training you need to be able to do this. And you can also write a letter to your senators and congresspersons to support the Burma Act. And in addition to that, you can also book a Zoom meeting with USACM with your sexual possessional persons. So this is all for people living outside the US. Once again, if you're not sure about how to call them, how to write a letter, or how to book a Zoom meeting, we're here for you. So just feel free to reach out to us at USACM. We're on social media. And last but not least, this is a bonus. If you guys have already signed petitions, followed us on social media and shared our content, and also called Congress, and you want to do more, you can always volunteer with us. The door is always open to join, volunteer with GM4MD. We can always use the help, as well as USACM. We're always looking for people who are willing to just fight for this cause and help us along. So any help is always appreciated. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jan. And I've added into the chat all of the petitions. I'm just adding now the where you can click, put in your address, and contact your members of Congress if you live in the US. And just to underscore, what Jan was saying, each week we send out to anyone in the US the latest situation in Congress, and links on how you can contact your members of Congress. We even include a spreadsheet where you could find your senators and your representatives, staffers' names, phone numbers, emails, so you can go a step forward and contact your members of Congress staffers directly, and develop a relationship with them. And I'm just putting in the chat the link to, there you go. In the chat, there's, again, if you live in the US, click on the link in the chat right now, which has a link to our action, which allows you, again, to put in your address and to contact all of your members of Congress directly in one shot, both senators and representative. And again, to underscore what Jan was saying, each week we send out an email to anyone who signed our petitions to give examples of further actions that they can take. And one of the things that we've been doing, as Jan's been saying, is with the companies that are supporting the Myanmar military, we provide links to their social media accounts. So you can post protests on their Facebook page, on their Instagram page. One thing that I like a lot is posting protests on their LinkedIn page, which companies really hate. And particularly if you're posting on job openings that they've put up there. A number of our supporters have posted on companies' job openings saying, exactly why they would never work for those companies because they're supporting the Myanmar military. Companies really hate that, and so we love doing that. And we also give out companies' Twitter handles so you can tweet directly at these companies as well. And it's something you can do any day. You can do it from the comfort of your own home, on your own phone. Sometimes when I'm watching late night TV, I'll go on to a company's website. I used to do this a lot with Chevron and just go down Chevron's Facebook posts and post protests and links to our petition, urging people to read the truth about Chevron in Myanmar. And those are posts that actually got a number of likes. And Chevron didn't take them down. It's great. You can still see them when you go on the company's Facebook page. So we're going to check the Q&A and see if we've got any questions that people want to ask. Again, put questions into the Q&A and we can pose those to our panelists. And okay, there's one question from an anonymous attendee, but let's answer this one. And attendee saying that lights are going out in Yangon and major cities at the moment, and they're wondering what if the US sanctions MOGE, would that be linked to any increase in the hours of this blackout? And also wondering if this would hurt civilians more. So I'm gonna put that over to Aile Yin and to speak to right away, to give a perspective from Myanmar, and also we're going to put that to Ben Hardman as well to speak to. So Aile Yin, well, you go right ahead.
Okay. So, well, political operation has grown to a numbing level as military put us into chaos without basic needs in our lives. Even in our major cities, people are deprived to get water after consecutive 24-hour power blackout. Even every day, we, people of Myanmar, are struggling to live with no civil rights. On the other hand, oil and gas corporations have also made false claims all this time, saying if they don't do business with junta, Myanmar will go under electricity blackout. Even if they continue their business here, nobody can guarantee we won't go under blackout. I mean, military can simply just cut off electricity if they want. If we look at the ongoing massive blackout, Total and Chevron are not leaving for another 6 months, according to their agreement. But are we getting electricity? Hunter has seized everything under their control, and it's just their call. If they want to cut electricity, it doesn't matter if Total and Chevron even make a payment to military or even US doesn't sanction MOGE. Hunter could simply cut electricity and internet anytime they want. Just few days ago, the whole Sakai region went under internet blackout, except for townships. That is why we, people of Myanmar, urge US government to sanction MOGE as soon as possible. The more you delay, the more we suffer. If you really care about the people of Myanmar and want to stop these horrific violations against us, you must sanction Myanmar oil and gas enterprise. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Ben, would you also wish to speak to this?
So the energy shortages currently Myanmar are in no way linked to actions of oil and gas companies, to the divestment or the EU sanctions. Gas production continuing at the same level it was actually. Obviously, most of that is exported, but around 20% of Myanmar's gas production does remain in the country for domestic use. The reason that we're seeing widespread power cuts now is the fact that the military is mismanaging the country. It has, for example, decided to stop importing LNG, which provided a substantial proportion of Yangon's liquor. It's decided instead to spend foreign revenues perhaps on things like aviation fuel for carrying out continued bombing raids. It's not choosing to spend its foreign currency reserves that it gets from gas revenue on buying LNG to maintain electricity. We've seen over the gigawatts of solar power projects cancelled or stalled since military power. We've seen LNG operators fail to renew their contracts. We've seen a French company, EDF, apply for major hydropower. So what we're seeing is massive reduction in the amount of energy the government has already, and the military bringing a severe likelihood of long-term energy insecurity. And so the NUG, for example, has made it very clear that the way to ensure energy security in Myanmar is sanctions on the to ensure that the military doesn't continue in power and continue decimating Myanmar's energy security. The second thing is that if there were sanctions, there's no reason that this needs to result in a stopping of gas production. Ultimately, it would be for the military to decide if it wanted to cut off electricity simply because, or to cut off gas production because revenues being paid in accordance with sanctions into escrow accounts and trust accounts. There's plenty of good reasons to think that the military would not do so. Most of the gas exported, it would very much harm military's relationships with Thailand and China, and it needs their support. It also needs to maintain electricity for businesses, for industry, try and maintain some control of the economy. If it cuts off electricity, then actually it will do itself substantial harm, and financial interests actually substantial harm. So there are plenty of reasons why trying to maintain some unlike the economy, sanctions results in some functional cultural sanctions that have standing massive risks while very industry. So
Okay, thanks very much, Ben. We've got a number of other good questions, and one is going to be a question for Mike Hark, which is if he could speak to the differences between the Burma Act of 2021 and the recent amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, on Burma. And before Mike looks into that, I've also included in the chat an article by Mike and by Athandar on precisely that topic that appeared in Myanmar Now. So over to Mike.
Well, thank you, Simon. So so the National Defense Authorization Act is a very large bill that authorizes spending on the U.S. military. And so most of it has very little to do with Burma. But there was a small amendment added, well, two actually, that I think were significant for Burma. One added by Maxine Waters that basically prevents the international financial institutions from lending to the junta. This is very important, and you might say, how can the U.S. do that alone? But the U.S. has a lot of voting power in international financial institutions, so it can basically block most things if it wants to. So it's very significant. That's a part of the NDAA that I think is not talked about nearly as much as it should be in terms of its relevance to Myanmar. The other part of the NDAA that is talked about a lot more is a reporting requirement. A number of different federal agencies, mostly the State Department, have to give a report to Congress about what their plan is to deal with a number of things related to transition to democracy in Burma, to supporting the democracy movement in Burma. That report was legally mandated to happen 3 weeks ago. It hasn't happened yet. It probably won't happen for at least another month or two. The NDAA and other legislation are often full of these reporting requirements, and they, don't happen on time. They're important in the sense that it makes the State Department and Treasury and others make clear their plan for what are they doing for democracy in Burma. Um, I've met with a few people who are working on the report. They are working on it. It will be out at some point, but the importance of it is that one, they have to make clear their plan, which means they have to have a plan. And two, when they actually give the report to Congress, we can ask tough questions to make sure that their plan includes the things that we want it to include. In that sense, it is significant. But it's not nearly as significant as the Burma Act, which is a law. It also doesn't mention MOGE, only the Burma Act mentions MOGE. And I think it's very important that, especially this webinar is about the Burma Act, right? If you're concerned about the oil and gas revenues, the Burma Act is a much more important thing to be lobbying for. There's nothing to lobby for in terms of the NDAA right now. You can maybe try and make your meeting with the State Department to get your little piece in there, or ask your member of Congress to ask a certain tough question when those briefings are given, when the report is given. But the Burma Act is just a much more substantive piece of legislation. It authorizes spending. It gives particular guidance on policy, and again, it mentions MOGE, and it forces the State Department to write a report about what they're thinking about sanctioning MOGE. So it's just much more kind of impactful piece of legislation. So that's all.
Thank you very much, Mike. And again, I refer you to Mike's excellent article with 8 which is in the chat, that appeared on Myanmar Now, and it goes into some depth on the differences between the NDAA amendment and the Burma Act of 2021. I'm going to take a couple of questions, going to combine them, and there's a question in the chat about basically, how do we put pressure on other countries and companies from headquartered in countries other than the US. And the other question is how would the sanctions work against companies like Costco from Korea? And one thing I want to point out to people is that there are two forms of sanctions we can help impose on the Myanmar military. The first is by lobbying our governments to enact sanctions on the flows of money that the Myanmar military receives, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's gems, whether it's timber, and other forms of sanctions directly on Myanmar military officials and their business cronies. And that's a very important thing for us to do wherever we live, whether it's the US, the European Union, the UK, other countries, Australia. We have power as citizens to put pressure on our governments to take action. And that's what, we've been organizing here in the US, particularly through helping people lobby their members of Congress. Because in the United States, what we've seen in the last 30 years is the US administration only takes action to put pressure on the Myanmar military when, in turn, Congress puts pressure on the administration. And in each case, when we've had sanctions on the Myanmar military, it's because Congress had put pressure on the administration to do so and threatened to pass sanctions themselves in the form of legislation if the administration doesn't impose these sanctions by executive action, which is how it's normally done. And so and again, that's where we have a lot of influence, for those of us who are living in the United States, is that we can directly lobby our members of Congress as voters. And that's very effective in getting members of Congress to take up the case of Myanmar. Now, we also have a lot of power as consumers, as investors, in the marketplace, and we can put that pressure on companies directly. And it doesn't matter where those companies are headquartered. It doesn't matter if they're headquartered like Chevron in the US, or Total in France, or POSCO in Korea, or PetroChina, which is headquartered actually in Hong Kong. We could put pressure on these companies through our power as consumers, our power as investors, and also we can put direct our social media power on these companies by, as we discussed earlier, by posting on their Facebook pages, posting on their Instagram pages, posting on their LinkedIn pages, and then posting these kinds of public protests on their social media that the company sees and other customers of those companies see. And this has been very effective. When Total announced that it was going to end its investment in Myanmar, they said that they couldn't meet the expectations of Myanmar civil society groups, international civil society groups, and their own shareholders. One of the things that we do at No Business with Genocide is we have actually organized shareholders in Total and shareholders in Chevron to put shareholder pressure on these companies. In the case of Chevron, we're working with trade union pension funds, social investment firms, and religious investors who have filed a shareholder resolution that's likely to come up for a vote at Chevron, asking Chevron, as a matter of policy, not to do business with governments engaged in genocide or crimes against humanity. So there are a lot of ways we can enact what I call these kinds of citizen sanctions, which, all of us can actually put direct pressure on companies all around the world. And, we've been working with a petition with a number of other groups to POSCO as well. I'll put that in the chat. And also, posting on POSCO's social media as well, and also working with some wonderful groups in South Korea who've been demonstrating outside POSCO's headquarters and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And again, the way we do this together is, where we can start is by starting these petitions, which then lead you to get on the email list of a number of groups sponsoring those petitions, not just No Business with Genocide, but also Global Movement for Myanmar Democracy, Jan Jan's organization, a number of other groups, the Blood Money Campaign as well. And we send emails, every week with updates on what people can do, what's happening in the news, how people can take the most effective action that they can take in the marketplace. And so it's a wonderful way to get involved. And this actually leads into a question that's been posed by Peter Svensson. And he's linked to a couple of change.org petitions calling to bring Min Aung Hlaing and the rest of the generals to the International Criminal Court, and also a petition to the Myanmar military directly to honor the 2020 election result. And these are petitions that are on change.org. Actually, not petitions we've organized. And these are useful. I think there are limits to the effectiveness of petition to the Myanmar military. I think the Myanmar military doesn't really take much notice of petitions. I think they take notice of sanctions. They take notice of campaigns that get petitions that get foreign companies like Kirin, the Japanese beer company, and others to end their business dealings and business partnerships with Myanmar military-owned companies. And I think, the Myanmar military is obviously feeling the pressure from the boycotts inside Myanmar of military-owned companies that, driven, for instance, sales of Myanmar beer, the military-owned beer company, to drop dramatically inside Myanmar. So again, I think the change.org petitions are I think they're useful in raising awareness. But unlike the petitions that we sponsor and Global Move for Myanmar Democracy and other groups sponsor that are on the Action Network, when you sign a petition on the Action Network, that connects you to us, gets you on our email list, and so that you can regularly hear through our emails, actions that you can take to that could effectively put pressure on the Myanmar military moving forward. And so it brings people into an organized movement that I think is very effective. And so, I mean, I'd like to pass over for a second to A.I. Yin, who can talk about some of the work of the Blood Money Campaign and its priorities, and also what how the action that we're taking outside of Myanmar feeds into those campaigns by the Blood Money Campaign inside Myanmar. So over to you, A.I. Lin.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, our demand is just to cut off the flow of that money to the military junta, which is in which military junta is using us to kill civilians. So we, as a Blood Money Campaign, we just collaborate with other organizations outside of the country. We did press conference to advocate international government and community. And also we have collaboration with German labor unions like ICL to advocate outside of Myanmar, the international community to advocate. Yes, thanks, Simon.
Terrific. And I think there's some links in the chat to the Blood Money Campaign's Instagram account and other social media accounts. And again, check those out. And it's another way of getting involved with the Blood Money Campaign and becoming part of this movement in solidarity with people inside Myanmar. Now, there's got one question here about says that there's a defensive ground force called the People's Defense Force (PDF), and they're limited in terms of what arms and equipment they have, but they are definitely putting their lives on the line. And again, I'll to pass over to A.I. Yin to again give us a perspective on the PDF from inside Myanmar. A.I. Yin, just unmute yourself and feel free to speak about the PDF. I actually want to, I'm not sure Washington's speaking up, but I'd like to sort of pass over to some of our other panelists. I know I know Mike has done some research on the PDF and can speak a little bit about that issue. Let's pass over to Mike for a second.
Sure. It's not something I can speak with any authority. I mean, I think that from the U.S. perspective, like the most important thing is to do what we can from here. Obviously, cutting off any funds that we can to the military, and then giving any humanitarian aid and other kinds of aid that we can. I mean, I think that's very brave what the PDFs are doing, and beyond that, I mean, I'm just humbled by them. So, I don't have much to say other than it's a very noble thing that you all are doing. Ben, I see you have your hand up, so you might want to jump in.
Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to go back to one of the earlier questions. The countries, POSCO, and it's like about South Korea, and I think it's important that Myanmar's Revolution, BMC, have been working with a coalition of, I think, 106 Korean civil society organizations. And the advice from the Korean CSOs is that the most effective way to stop POSCO's participation is the sanctions. And so that's why they focused on multiple sanctions, EU and the US, because they considered that impact POSCO most effectively. My understanding is that POSCO said it would comply with US sanctions. I think it suggested that it would be forced out of the country if it did. It's important to remember that Yadana, the project operated by Total and Chevron, is coming to the end of its productive life. It will have run out of gas in maybe 4 years, and so that's partly why Total and Chevron are perhaps able to divest or happy to divest, because there isn't that much gas left. Whereas if sanctions stopped POSCO from making payments, from forcing to make payments to escrow accounts, POSCO has a 51% share of the Shui gas project. It's got many years of gas left. It will fight tooth and nail to stay in those contracts and to find a way to justify paying funds into escrow rather than being forced out. It will do everything it can to avoid being forced out. It's heavily reliant. A large portion of its revenues come from the Shui gas pipeline. And so it's not just going to divest in the same way that Chevron.
Well, thanks, Ben. I'll just add a tiny thing to that. I mean, because of dollar dominance and because the US has worked very hard to globalize its financial system in the past 30 years, like the US action on these things is very, very impactful in a way that other countries are not. And so I think that means if you're watching from the United States, that you have a particular responsibility to be active on this issue. And get in touch with me or Jan, or attend one of our trainings to learn how to lobby effectively, which we do just gonna plug it now, every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can find it at tinyurl/call Congress for Burma. Yeah, go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, to that, I would also just like to add that talking with your own Congress offices, congressional persons, like it's the best effective action you can ever take as a US citizen. I didn't really notice this or understand this, until just a few years ago. And when I did, I was like, wow, it makes me feel so much better knowing that that's the best and the most that you can do as a US citizen, because there's literally nothing more that you can do. And it's probably the least that you can do too, in a way. There's always more that you can do. You can always give more time, more money, more energy. But logistically, and legislatively, as an American US citizen, that's the best action you can ever take. So I just want to stress that and hope that people do get encouraged to be able to, take action on this. And don't be afraid. I think sometimes it's daunting to talk with, political persons up there, but literally, these people are here to serve you as, your own senators and representatives. So don't ever feel like, you should be feeling fear or anything. We're here to help you. So just feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you.
again, I'd like to reinforce that we've been working with people all around the country right now to train them up in how to effectively contact their member of Congress, contact the office. We give them staff people that they can speak to, and also train them up in how to run an effective Zoom call with their congressman's staff to specifically ask for co-sponsorship of the Burma Act and other asks that people have. So yeah, it's we make that as easy as possible for people. If you're in the US and you're on our email list, every week you're getting an email which details the current state of play in Congress, contains a link to an online action where you can simply put in your address. We can simply put in your address and send a message directly to your US senators and your members of Congress. And in fact, I've just put that action again in the chat so that you can just click on that if you live in the US and send a message to your senators and representatives right away. And after you take that action, you get a thank you email from Mike here, which details how you can directly call and or email your members of Congress staff. And it contains a link to a spreadsheet where you can find the names, emails, and phone numbers of the staffers to your senators and to your representative, so that you can contact them directly via email or even give them a phone call. And it's, as Jan says, it's amazing how much power you have as a voter, as someone living in the district. You can, with one phone call, one email, one Zoom meeting, you can get a member of Congress, whether it's a House member or senator, to actually sign up as a co-sponsor of the Burma Act. So definitely take advantage of that. So we're coming up to the end of the hour here, and I think we've actually answered all the questions that we're able to that have been posed in the Q&A and also in the chat. So I would like to thank everybody who's been on this call and thank the panelists for their time and assistance, but also to thank everyone who's watching this, who's taken an interest in Myanmar and who has wants to know how they can take action, effective action in support of the Myanmar people. One of the things we'll be doing is we'll be sending an email to everyone registered with links to these actions and through which you can sign up and get on our email list if you're not on that email list. And again, if you're watching this through Facebook or streaming or any other means, send us a message. Send a message to us through our Facebook page and saying that you want to get involved, and we'll gladly sign you up and give you all kinds of actions that you can take, and if need be, any kind of training that you need to take effective action. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for taking part in this, and let's keep working until we help the Myanmar people rid themselves of this military dictatorship. Thank you.